This is the Gutsy Health Podcast with Janique and Tristan Roney. Hey, you guys. Welcome back to the Gutsy Health Podcast.
That was dramatic.
That? Why?
Hi, everybody.
No, you did like a hand signal. So I'm like, oh, are we stopping? Are we redoing this?
I don't know what my hands are doing.
Okay.
They just float in the air when I'm talking.
Well, welcome back.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome. Thank you for tuning in today as we awkwardly do our intro.
So we just got back from vacation, which is...
We're still in vacation mode.
Not an excuse.
Oh, no, it is an excuse. It's totally an excuse.
It's a reason. There's a difference.
I still wish I was on a beach right now. I totally did just tune out, though, that week. It was amazing. It was so nice.
It was nice. And now we're back and we're looking at our calendar for the coming week where we're making up for what we missed.
We're sweating a little bit.
We're sweating a little bit, which is why this will be a really nice break for us.
Right.
Because we can get on our soapbox and just start rambling for an hour and it'll be fun.
Exactly.
We'll feel refreshed.
For us. We don't know about you guys.
Hopefully for you.
But what are we talking about today? We're talking about
the meats.
We're talking about animal products, you guys. And this isn't going to be like we're bashing vegans or we're bashing carnivore people. This is just spouting information on what we know and what we've researched. Mm-hmm. And because here's the thing, there is no perfect diet for anyone out there.
Right.
None. I was actually just listening to a podcast on a 12-year fruitarian. And I was like, that's really great that it works for you. That's amazing. You feel amazing on it. But how many people have tried fruitarianism and like almost died?
When I lived in Ukraine, there was a newspaper article about a breatharian.
Oh, gosh.
Who had literally, according to the newspaper article, this individual had survived for 20 years by eating the sun.
Oh, yes. Sun gazers. I've heard of that.
Yeah.
They watch the sun go down and that's their food.
And that's their food. I don't know. You guys, I'm not dissing that. It just breaks my brain. That's all.
So I do want to preface this episode and say, this is what we have learned. This is what we've seen in our clinical setting. And we're going to explain why we recommend what we do. But again, it's not for everyone. Does it work for a lot of people? Yes, absolutely. Does it work for everyone? No. You are the expert in your body. No one else. I'm not the expert. Tristan's not the expert. We're just here to help you educate and get all the tools and information so you can come up with your own educated decisions.
Right. And on the flip side of that, just because you or someone you know is an exception to what we talk about today doesn't automatically make us wrong.
Right, exactly.
Because as we've already pointed out, there are people of all walks of life, all nutritional inclinations that thrive on what they're doing. But what we are trying to provide here, and what we generally try to do, is give a good general approach to good health. Mm-hmm. The things that have generally worked quite well through the history of humankind.
Yep. And what we have tried to sift through heaps of crappy research to find some golden nuggets. Because if you guys haven't listened to our research podcast, please do.
It's our least popular episode ever.
It's so fun. I don't know why. It was so fun to record.
I worked so hard on that one.
It was such a good episode. My gosh.
But it is. It's hard because it's not directly relevant. Like, how many people out there are really going to dive into the research? I don't blame you for not doing that. You have stuff to do. You've got kids to raise, jobs to work at, but fun things to spend your time on.
But this is the thing, is you can find a research paper to support every opinion out there, every single opinion. Right. So what's true, you know, and what they aren't telling you is the story you need to know, which is what we do, which we and our mentors have done, and the schools because I don't know if a lot of you know this, but Tristan and I are currently in school, and we probably will be until the day we die. And so all of our professors and educators and doctors that are teaching our classes, them and their colleagues do this same kind of super sleuthing, and we all kind of band together and share information. And so,
Right.
so that's kind of fun, but we don't expect you to spend, I don't know, 20 plus hours a week doing research.
No.
That's why we created a podcast, so we can just kind of give you the bullet points.
Yeah. So we're kind of asking you to trust us. If you
And
do
to
decide
do your own research.
if
as
you do
well.
decide to do your own research, go listen to that episode.
Yes.
You need to educate yourself before you educate yourself.
Exactly.
Or you're going to get miseducated.
Exactly. So, so let's go back to our topic today. Talking about animal meat, consuming animal meat, animal products. If you follow me on Instagram or Tristan on Instagram, you haven't been on a lot lately, but I regularly recommend bone broth, organ complex, which has liver and heart and kidneys in it. We always talk about eating snout to tail. I've spoken in the past about how the Native American Indians would actually, when their women were infertile, they would actually feed the ovaries of bears to those women to help them fall pregnant. Now, back in the day, the organs were the cream of the crop. The white meats, the brown meats, that was the dirty food. And now it's completely switched around where we gag at the thought of eating these other organs. Whereas that is actually, I was listening to those people on that podcast where they were talking about these people in the 20s and 30s that all they did was eat meat and they never developed scurvy. And the guy who was interviewing was like, well, how did they get their vitamin C? And he's like, well, they were obviously eating the organs. And it's like, yes, the organs have a very broad spectrum of vitamins and minerals that we miss from the meaty part.
Right.
And so go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm trying really hard not to go off on a tangent when it comes to vitamin C because it's such a fascinating concept. Vitamin C is abundant in meat, but it's very fragile. So it tends to break down quickly when it gets heated. So generally speaking, meat is a terrible source of vitamin C.
Right.
But there's some speculation that people who eat a heavy meat diet, like the carnivore people, they develop a high absorption rate of vitamin C.
I've never heard of that.
I don't know that there's any research to support it yet. It's speculation based on the fact that there are people now who have been doing carnivore for a couple of years and they show no signs of deterioration in the way of vitamin C.
Right.
Who knows? That we'll do another episode in 2 years when maybe they've looked into it and we'll update
Who knows? Yeah, exactly. But what was I saying? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So you were talking about meat and things.
Oh, so thanks.
You're welcome.
I thought you were going to keep going.
No, that was me not going on a tangent.
Okay. So yes, I do recommend these things. And I want to talk about more of the why. Why do I recommend a lot of bone broths and organ complexes to people? One, because, and Tristan, feel free to jump in whenever, but one, because the majority of people that come to me are actually very ill and they've been ill for a long time. Right. They have a lot of hormonal imbalances. And with a lot of our hormones, we actually need steroids. We need cortisol, cholesterol. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for.
Right.
We need cholesterol, which turns into steroids, which turns into hormones.
So hormones generally require cholesterol, right? And in order to get cholesterol, our body produces most of it actually.
Yep.
But we get a decent amount of that, like 25% of it from our animal products.
And let's go back to the person who's sick. Yes, our body produces most of it. What if they have a sick liver? Because your liver actually produces most of it, right? And so if you're looking at an athlete who has a healthy body, yes, they would be totally fine doing less animal protein. It's like the game changers, right?
Wow.
Those people, and that's a whole different subject for another time. But a healthy person doing lots of plant-based stuff, raw food, is going to have a very, very different experience to an unhealthy person who can't digest fibers, who can't digest raw foods, who is having a hard time with the lectins in plant-based foods. And they need absorption fast and they need high density minerals and vitamins really fast. Those are the types of people that I'm like, okay, we need a little bit more animal-based stuff in your diet to help heal you. Now, I do want to make a very clear distinction. Not once have I said, take out the vegetables.
Nope.
All right. What is the common denominator with all of, with medical medium, with the paleo diet, with, with all of these diets, the common denominator is keeping the vegetables there. Lots and lots and lots of it.
One exception.
Who?
Well, okay.
What's the exception?
Two exceptions. One of them is potentially this carnivore diet.
Yes, exactly. That's
seems
one
to be
exception.
working for some people, but I wouldn't really call that an exception because we don't have enough data yet.
Right.
These people are making themselves guinea pigs, and so far it seems to be working.
So far,
for
so
them,
good.
But we won't know what happens 20 years from now for another 18 years.
No
right?
idea.
But the other exception is there was one study, I think it was done like 12 years ago, where they found that cutting out fiber actually resolved some very difficult digestive issues in some people.
In some people, yeah.
Right. In this group that they studied, they found that cutting out fiber seemed to be very helpful. Now, there were definitely issues with the methodology in it, but there is something to be said for that. In, for instance, a SIBO situation, right? Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, where you're constantly feeding those bacteria that are where they're not supposed to be with your fiber, certain types of fiber at least, and that makes it difficult. So going off of it temporarily does help.
Yep.
Which isn't to say you need to go carnivore, but
that's the same thing with probiotics too. A lot of people do really well with probiotics, and some people take probiotics and they feel as sick as dogs, and it's because they probably have SIBO. So again, it's not a one size fits all. Again, going back to who are the people that we talk with a lot, they're very ill, and most of them, I would say 9 out of 10 people have digestive issues.
Right.
And so part of what we recommend is to really nurture the gut, is to really get efficient absorption, maximum absorption, and you get maximum absorption of your amino acids actually from animal protein. So someone who is very sick, that maximum absorption will either make or break them. Like we want the fastest amount of healing with the least amount of food.
Right.
And so that's why we recommend bone broths. That's why we recommend organ complexes and not all of these complex hybridized vitamins and synthetic vitamins and all that kind of stuff.
And if you've followed any of the kind of vegan proponents, maybe that's not the right term to use, the whole food plant-based proponents like Dr. Greger, right, of Nutrition Facts. He actually recommends as a matter of course that you take a vitamin D supplement every day and a vitamin B12 supplement every day. And that to me is very telling, right? That always frustrated me when I was eating a vegan diet because it didn't make sense that we would have to supplement to have the optimal diet, right? That we didn't have the ability to supplement for thousands of millions or however long people have been around, yet they were figuring it out. And as far as I can tell, they were doing pretty well as long as they didn't get like slashed to death by an enemy or a saber-toothed tiger. I don't know, whatever killed people back then, right? Yeah. Probably a virus. So having to do that to keep yourself going now, having to take a synthetic supplement or really even a whole food-based supplement on a long-term basis to prevent nutrient deficiency, that doesn't seem right.
Right. And we already live in an extremely nutrient depleted society. Even when you are eating tons of fruits and vegetables, the nutrient density and concentration is like 1/18th or 1/16th of what it used to be 50 years ago. Yeah. Our soil is so depleted, so we have less minerals in our food, which is why we have to supplement with minerals and put it in our water, or take stuff like Shilajit, or what else is it that we take?
That's about it. The either the minerals or the Shilajit or a combination of both. Yeah. That kind of helps to replenish the minerals that we're not getting from the soil.
Right.
Of course, the best option would be to fix your soil in your own backyard.
I know.
And start a little garden.
Who has
of your
time
own.
For that?
Well, no one does. And so that's why supplementation tends to be a thing.
Right.
Speaking of time, when you are very sick, you don't really have a lot of time, nor do you have a lot of energy to go through and completely rehabilitate the entire food chain going into your house, which is why animal products can be the fastest way back to
healing,
getting what your body needs so it can heal itself.
Exactly.
Right. That is our philosophy of healing, is that the body knows how. It just needs the right building materials.
Exactly.
So we strive to provide those in the most efficient way possible, and then get out of the way.
Right. And I want to circle back to the whole carnivore diet thing, where the reason why people are having so much success with it is probably because of gut dysbiosis,
Maybe
because of SIBO. And so SIBO. I don't know why I said it like that.
It's like
and now I've lost my train of thought.
The Spanish term for it. There's SIBO. But down south, they call it SIBO.
SIBO.
La SIBO.
Yeah.
Anyway, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
I forgot what I was talking about. Thanks.
You were talking about carnivore diet. It helps because potentially what they have going on is SIBO, which is preventing them from absorbing nutrients. Or
like I said before, they can't digest anything. And so we have to go back to most absorbable, easily digestible, fixing your digestive tract, taking the burden off of that again.
Right.
How did we even get there? We did an episode about how we got to such dysfunctional gut function. Right. But to quickly sum it up for you, the standard American diet, which I love that the SAD, the standard American diet, spells out SAD.
The acronym is SAD.
The acronym, thank you. That's what I'm looking for. And it is sad.
It makes you sad, literally. It depresses people.
It is really sad. And it destroys our guts and it destroys our gut biome. It's super inflammatory. It causes all kinds of inflammation, insulin resistance. I mean, there's a reason why so many Americans now have heart disease, gallbladders being cut out of them. They have chronic bloat and gassiness. I mean, you name it, we are suffering with it. And another thing that a lot of these, again, we live in a day and age where we have all of these extremely polarizing opinions on nutrition. And we're not talking enough about our very individualized gut biome and what works for that, right? Because our gut biome is like a fingerprint. It is so unique to us. And so all of us are arguing with each other saying, our philosophy is the best. Our philosophy is the best. But yet it just comes down to what works for your body, right? So again, we are sharing with you what we have seen work for the majority of people. Right. Take this information, utilize it, play around with it, see what sticks with you and your healing protocol and kind of go from there.
Right. So let's define the SAD diet real quick, the standard American diet, because we know that it's terrible. People always talk about how awful the standard American diet is. But I don't think people really understand what it is and what it entails. Because if you ask the average person, the first thing they'll mention when you say, oh, what kinds of foods go into a standard American diet? Right. Hamburgers. Right? Yeah. I mean, is that not going to be the first thing? Maybe hot dogs?
Hamburgers, hot dogs.
Maybe pizza?
Yeah.
So what exactly is it in the standard American diet that makes it bad for you? Because I think that the misconception is that it's the meat. Yeah. Along with the sugar and all the other stuff. But the meat is as much a culprit in the minds of the uninformed average person. So
when I think of the standard American diet, the first thing that comes to mind is breads, pastas, wheats, processed foods, crackers, pretzels. Should I keep going?
Chips,
the
Cheetos,
the coating
Fritos.
Of your chicken. It's Panko. The flours. Yeah. It's all of that.
So I think of 3 major categories that come to mind. Refined grains.
Yes.
For sure.
Horrible. Right. Poisonous.
Refined grains. And
drenched in glyphosate.
I mean, within reason, right? So a really good homemade sourdough bread with nothing added to it other than the absolute essentials.
With organic grains and true like sourdough starter.
Not necessarily a problem, although the average person is still going to struggle with those because their gut isn't in the right place. But not inherently bad for you.
Maybe not the average person, but if you're a sick person, and maybe that is becoming the average person.
The average person is sick. Yeah, absolutely.
So you might have a harder time until you can heal your body to a point where you can start absorbing and utilizing sourdough bread.
But you go to a grocery store and you look at the bread aisle, you're not going to see much of that. In fact, we realized just like yesterday how lucky we are, Janique and I, where we live, because we have access to that bread at the local grocery store.
Yeah.
It's, I'm going to say it wrong, Abigail's oven, right?
Yes, it's
I always call it
Abigail's.
Angie's oven.
No.
Abigail's oven, it has like 5 ingredients.
Right.
It's the sourdough starter,
yep.
right? The salt,
The wheat.
water, the wheat,
Yeah.
and
I think
that's it. That's it.
Literally it.
There's nothing else in it. We went to this amazing health food store while we were in California on vacation. It was like nirvana for crunchy, healthy people like us. It was called Mother's Market. You may have heard of it if you've spent much time down there, or maybe they have it in other states. I don't know. But we went to the bread aisle and I'm thinking, oh, this will be really fun. We'll see what kinds of No, it was terrible. Every single product on that bread aisle had this enriched, bleached, well, some of them was unbleached flour, but it was enriched with all of these synthetic vitamins. It was unbelievable. And then there were a good 15 other ingredients added to it.
Right. And so again, if you are healthy enough to metabolize like organic bread, absolutely. You know, if you love baking, do your sourdough starter, bake your bread. But if you're probably someone that's working with us, if you're sick, if you have hormonal imbalances, if you have insulin resistance, we can't do the wheat right now.
If you have constipation and or diarrhea, if is this sounding like a Pepto-Bismol advertisement yet? So anyway, getting back to the standard American diet, I think that the refined grains are one of the major 3 categories. Number 2 is the industrial seed oils, which turn into trans fats.
The PUFAs, the polyunsaturated fatty acids. Yeah, they're horrible.
The polyunsaturated fatty acids. Now, when we say trans fats, there's actually natural trans fats that occur in meats that don't cause the same problems that these added trans fats, where they basically hydrogenate these seed oils so that they stay stable at room temperature, right? I don't know. That's probably too much information, but the fact is that all the sunflower oil, the safflower oil, the soybean oil, the canola, the vegetable oil, whatever is in that, right? All of that is incredibly inflammatory.
Incredibly.
It just sends inflammation through the roof.
Yeah.
And what's so crazy about it is that it is marketed as the heart healthy alternative to saturated fats. We did a whole episode on that, so we won't dive deeper into that. But the fact is that the saturated fats have been villainized by basically the sugar industry paying off these researchers to make it look like it was the culprit for all these problems. And we're just now starting to realize what a horrible mistake we made.
Yeah.
Maybe ignoring the wisdom of generations upon generations of our ancestors wasn't the best idea when it came to our health.
Right.
Right. And so there's 2 categories, right? We have the refined grains. We've got these seed oils that are being turned into trans fats basically, and then putting us on fire when we eat the chips and basically anytime you eat out, unless you live in Southern California where they will tell you these are the oils we cook with and we're going to charge you $100 for that privilege. You're getting those terrible oils. Standard American diet. The third one, sugar. Right? It's in everything. In things that it has no business being in.
Like bread. Like pasta.
Yeah, like bread, like crackers, pasta. I mean,
like baby formula.
Once again, you go to the middle aisles of the grocery store with all the prepackaged, jarred, canned, whatever boxed foods. There's probably sugar thrown in there. Go to the store. Go to the store right now. Pause this. Go to the store and go to the pasta sauce aisle and try to find a pasta sauce that is both organic and does not have any added sugars.
It's so hard.
We can find one where we live, and I can't even remember what it's called, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you virtually can't find it. Even the pasta sauce has sugar added to it. The ketchup has sugar added to it.
And we've said this before, but we'll say it again. It's because it's the most addicting substance on the planet. And when you have people hooked to your food, you have a customer for life.
Yeah.
It's the perfect business model.
Right.
And it's coming at our expense. And not only that, but sugar is subsidized in this country. Now, what we should be subsidizing are vegetables. But
well, we're subsidizing corn and soy.
Yeah.
And wheat, right? So, we should be subsidizing the produce, right? That part of the grocery store at the back that's always cold and wet and neglected in most places.
Right. So you guys,
so that's our definition of the standard American diet.
Yeah.
Those there's probably more to it. I'm sure that there's a lot more to it, but really, if you can cut out those 3 things from your daily intake of food, you are going to be a much healthier person. All the more so if you do it before you get really sick.
Yeah.
Right. The people that we're working with, for the most part, it's too late for them. Not in the sense that they can't get better, but it's too late for them to just make simple changes and then have everything fall into place.
Right.
It takes a lot more work. And I'm saying this as someone who was there, right? Stage 4 cancer. I couldn't just cut out those foods and then everything goes back to normal for me. Once cancer set in, it's a very sticky son of a gun.
Yeah.
It doesn't want to go away. So you have to get a lot more intensive, which is why we have the hyperbaric oxygen, why we have the ozone sauna, why we have all of that. So don't wait until you get there.
Zach Bush actually posted something on Instagram earlier this week.
Janique has like this farmer crush on Zach Bush.
I do.
He's an MD, right?
Don't make it awkward because then he'll never come on our podcast.
It's a farmer. It's not a love crush. It's a farmer crush.
I totally it's an information crush. Like he's so brilliant.
It's a smart person.
Yes.
Thing.
Yes. Zach, if you're listening, I'm sorry he said that. No, but he said, so he posted that in the 1940s, 1 in 16 people were diagnosed with cancer. In the 1970s, it was 1 in 10. And then today it's 1 in 3.
Yeah.
However, in men, it's 1 in 2.
Yeah.
And so, so something isn't working in our favor, guys.
Right.
And yes.
Real quick,
there's
we have to
millions
acknowledge
of people screaming. Correlation doesn't equal causation, you guys.
And we've gotten better at screening, so we're catching more cancer
I
cases.
have a lot of doctors screaming at me right now, being like, yeah, but things are different. But you guys, like, from 1 in 16 to 1 in 3, like, there's something happening here. And we're sicker and we have more allergies, more sick people, more problems. There's something that we're being exposed to daily that we haven't recognized yet. And we're hoping you're recognizing it. And it's what you're putting on your plate every single day and microdosing on poison.
Yeah. Babe, I mean, is it even micro at this point? It feels like it's macro dosing on poison, especially when it comes to the sugar. We're doing, what is it, 115 pounds a year per person?
It's something ridiculous like that.
It's insane. It used to be 5 pounds a year per person.
Right.
Right. Which I hope is somewhere around what I'm getting. Hopefully less than that. But 115 pounds, the average person.
Right.
Come on. Come on. So don't do that.
For women, we're supposed to only consume 24 grams of sugar per day. And
according to what? Is
I don't know.
Is that like FDA, USDA guidelines?
I'd have to look that up. While you're talking, I'll look it up.
Okay.
But the average American is getting closer to like 80 to 90
grams a day.
Some sources even guess that it's closer to like 120.
And that's average, which means half the people are getting more than that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So that's a lot, guys.
And we already know that sugar just causes a massive cascade of inflammation and disease and so many hormonal imbalances and liver toxicity and you name it. But we are supposed to be talking about animal protein.
Right. So where does meat fit into the standard American diet, right? We've just talked about our definition, which doesn't really mention the meat.
Right.
However, there actually is some kind of a logic behind the idea that the meat that people are eating in the standard American diet is problematic.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the research around meat, and because there's a very famous book called The China Study, and it used a lot. What kind of research did it use mainly for? It was epidemiological.
Yes, epidemiological studies, which is where they basically ask people a bunch of questions about their health and then a bunch of questions about what they eat, and then they do correlations to see, people that eat this tend to have this health problem, people that eat this don't have this health problem, and they try to draw conclusions from it.
Yep, and as we explained in our research episode, research like that is extremely problematic. People report false claims all the time. For instance, a good example is, what did you guys eat last week? Can you recall everything you ate? Can you tell me the grams of proteins you ate and the grams of sugar?
Yeah.
No. But let's say I was a researcher and I said, I'm going to study you and I need you to record for me everything you've eaten in the last month. Go.
Sometimes the last year.
Yeah. How accurate do you think that's going to be?
Right.
You know, it's pretty problematic, and there are so many other factors that come into play. So which amount of research in these books and all these claims accounted for the amount of vegetables people were eating? Because you can cook meat in inflammatory oils, like we've spoken before, and it can be problematic and inflammatory in your body. Or you can eat meat in good, healthy fats and eat it with a bunch of vegetables and have a completely different outcome. Now, remember, guys, that common denominator is cooked veggies. It's veggies. It doesn't have to be cooked veggies. It's just veggies in general. Right. You know, people that are, what would have been really, really interesting is if they took health conscious people in general and took the health conscious vegans and the health conscious meat eaters, the omnivores, and compared the two.
Right. Which, I don't to my knowledge, they haven't done that before. No one's
done that yet. I hope if one of you guys are listening, please send over that research if you've read it, because I haven't seen it yet.
Right.
And let's say it was vegetarians eating 8+ servings of vegetables a day versus omnivores eating 8+ servings of vegetables a day. Right. Let's compare those two people.
Yes.
But don't compare the health conscious vegan to the standard American diet person on this other side eating meat and like fried potatoes.
Yeah.
That's two different ballparks completely. But we're making our lifestyle decisions off of this kind of research, and we're saying, therefore meat is bad. Yes, when it is prepped as a chicken nugget, it is bad. You know, when it is deep fried in PUFAs.
And I think we need to talk about the source of the meat too.
Oh, that's huge.
Now, once again, the research isn't there. We haven't done the research to really get into the nitty gritty about the health differences between these factory farmed meats and these free range, grass fed, whatever meats, right? But there's definitely a strong reason to believe there's a big difference between a factory farmed chicken that is then soaked in vegetable oil and covered in bread-like substance and turned into a chicken nugget versus a free range organic chicken that ran wild eating bugs and whatever plants it came across.
Exactly.
And then was turned into a chicken. Right?
You know the saying, you are what you eat. Well, you are what your food eats too.
Yeah.
Like what your food is eating is what you're eating. So if your food is eating corn, you're eating corn. If your food is being pumped with hormones, you're being pumped with hormones. And how many women out there and men have hormonal issues?
Right.
It's massive.
It's like all of them these days.
Hasn't sperm count gone down by like 70% in the last 50 years?
Yeah.
It's you guys, we're not talking like 5 to 10%. If it was like 5 to 10, even 20%, I'd be like, margin of error.
Yeah, no, it's substantial.
70%.
Yeah.
Sperm count has gone down 70%, you guys. That's a lot. Like, no wonder we're having infertility issues in this day and age. It's because the food we're eating is pumped with corn, and which is very inflammatory. And the beef that we're eating is full of hormones.
And that is an interesting thing that maybe we've talked about this on a different episode, but there's that guy who he analyzes hair samples to see the mineral content in them, and he can make a very good estimation of your diet based on what he sees in your hair. And even primarily meat eaters who are eating your traditional corn-fed beef have like 50% of their diet originated from corn, meaning it has the original components of corn still in it. Right. And I don't know how that's affecting us. The research, again, hasn't been done on that.
It's not
but it's interesting.
There yet.
Right.
We have a lot of anecdotal evidence around it, though. Like tons of people reporting that when they switch their meat sources, they feel better.
Yeah.
They have less autoimmune issues.
Right.
You know, and we're not talking like tens of people. We're talking hundreds of thousands of people that are reporting this. Right. Like it's a number that you can't ignore.
Right. Right.
And so another issue with factory farm cows is stress hormone, you guys. Cortisol, when they are in these extremely abusive environments, their cortisol is going through the roof. They're being slaughtered, and then you're eating that.
Right.
That's in the produce. And then we wonder why we're so stressed. It's hormone. It's a chemical that we're eating, so we are absolutely what our food eats, what our food experiences.
Right. And, we also have to acknowledge the interplay between the health of our planet and the health of our own bodies.
Totally.
We talk about this all the time, right? The soil gut connection.
Right.
But it plays into our animal products as well.
Totally.
And I strongly believe, and maybe this is more of a spiritual perspective than a data-based science perspective, but I believe that what's good for the planet is good for the person.
Right.
And if you ever want to really get into the weeds and have your mind blown, try doing some research on whether it really is better for the planet for us all to go vegan or vegetarian. You'll be surprised at what you find, because animals, it turns out, are extremely important to the ecological health of the planet.
Right.
We rely on them for fertilizer, right? Going away from animal fertilizer was one of the most destructive things we ever did to our soil.
Yep.
And it is the reason why our soil is so depleted now and why we have less than, 65 harvests left before we can't produce any more food.
Yep.
And then we're all going to have to go carnivore, I guess. I don't know. No, because the crops are needed for the animals too. We're in trouble, basically.
Mark Hyman did a Instagram segment on it's not the cow, it's the how.
Yeah.
How it's done.
Yeah.
It truly matters how we are farming our protein these days.
Yeah.
How we are raising that protein,
Yes.
The environment that it's in. And so are we pro animal protein?
Absolutely.
Yes, because it's very easily absorbed, especially by people that are very sick. And it provides a lot of really nutrient dense, it's a really nutrient dense source of amino acids. And then also, again, going back to the organs, the collagen, the bone broths, like it's all really, really important.
So let's talk about some of the objections that people listening might be experiencing right now. They might be thinking in their heads, or objections that we've come across in the past when we talk about animal products. Now, keeping in mind that, once again, I used to be whole foods plant-based, right? I was vegan. I've done it twice actually in my life. And so I'm very familiar with the arguments on that side of it.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I did subscribe to those arguments, and I changed my mind once I started really doing the research.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest arguments that people make, Janique has already addressed, which is, well, we have all this epidemiological research that shows that vegetarians and vegans live longer and they're healthier. But once again, once we dig into that data, we find that we are not comparing apples to apples.
Right.
We are comparing a group that is generally a lot more health conscious, the vegan vegetarian group, right? People don't just do that for fun.
And the majority of vegans and vegetarians are extremely health conscious.
Yes,
absolutely. And they're environmentally conscious too.
Yes, there's also the moral aspect of it. There's no question about that. But
so they're more
on the
mindful.
whole, they are far more likely to care about their health.
Yeah.
And then they're comparing that to everybody else, right? This big lumped in group, most of which don't think about their health.
Right.
Or if they do, it's a very medicalized version of it, which is I get sick, I go to the doctor, I get a prescription, I take my medication,
right,
and so on, which tends not to be that effective, it turns out.
Right.
So we can't compare those two groups, but unfortunately we've never compared properly.
Right.
And so we can't really say. We have our own opinions on how that would go, but I hope that at least partially addresses that objection that people have. And when you hear people make that argument that, well, the science shows that vegetarians and vegans live longer, question that. Look into that. Look at the methodology of those studies. You'll find that it is not nearly as convincing as they would have you believe it is.
Right. There's that whole blue zones thing. And I'm pretty sure
Yes.
all the people in those blue zones drink red wine. And in my opinion, I don't think alcohol is really healthy for you, but yet they're living until they're like 110.
But let's talk about how alcohol could be part of a healthy lifestyle.
I have no idea, to be honest.
It helps people to relax.
Okay.
Right? That doesn't mean that it is the reason they relax, but it certainly is what they use to relax.
Right.
They could probably replace that with meditation and be even healthier.
Right.
But the fact is that that's how they're using it.
Gotcha.
People in blue zones are very rarely binge drinkers or heavy drinkers, but a lot of times, yes, they are regular drinkers, at least in small amounts.
Right.
So, whatever that means. The other thing about that Blue Zones book is that it didn't characterize their diets very accurately.
Oh, really?
No, not at all. In fact, I encourage you to go and look up Sally Fallon Morell's critique of the Blue Zones book.
Interesting.
She took every single one of those cultures that were listed in the Blue Zones book, and she went through and broke down what they actually eat and their actual diet. None of them are nearly as vegetarian as the author of the Blue Zones book would have you believe.
Oh,
yeah.
Scandalous.
And by the way, Sally Fallon Morell, she's like the president of the Weston A. Price Foundation. We're big fans of the Weston Price philosophy.
Yeah.
But she wrote her own book, which is, I think it's called, I'm going to mess it up, Nourishing Diets or Nourishing Traditions. Well, she has a whole series of these nourishing traditions, but basically it's her own Blue Zones book. And she looks at all these different cultures who are basically living a Weston Price style diet, which is a lot of traditional foods and very heavy in animal products.
Homegrown animal products.
And they're doing so well. They're so healthy. So there's nothing to it, basically. This concept of vegetarians live longer and are healthier. It's not about the meat.
Right.
It's not about the animal products.
And going back to that common denominator, which is the vegetables, are you eating lots of vegetables? Are you eating lots of healthy fats? So one thing I want to bring up with you guys too is I get a few people that have said, well, when I cut out meat, I felt so much better. And I want to bring a few things to your mind to think about if you are one of these people thinking of cutting out meat, is what did they cut out at the same time? Did they cut out meat and grains? Did they cut out meat and grains and sugar? Did they cut out all processed foods and meat and grains and sugar? Because oftentimes when people get to a point where they're so sick, they make drastic changes. And so cutting out the meat is associated with their healing. And what will often happen, or what I often see, is they will hit a plateau where they are doing a lot better, but they still have a lot of health issues that they're trying to fine tune. And it's really hard to communicate with them because for someone like me, it's as clear as day what the issue is. Now I do want to bring this to your guys's, the forefront of your thought process when you are going through your own healing journey is, what does your digestion look like? Because if you have low hydrochloric acid, if you have indigestion with protein, then if you are stressed, you have low hydrochloric acid in your stomach, and hydrochloric acid is vital for breaking down protein. So let's say you're having indigestion, you can't break down proteins, you are having inflammation as a result, and then you cut out wheat and sugar and gluten and dairy and animal protein, and things are working beautifully again. Okay, now that's a good starting point. But is it possible to heal your gut and then reintroduce that meat again and help you heal and absorb things faster and better? That's something worth circling around back to. If this is you, or if this is someone that you know that has gone down this road and they have received benefit from going vegan, but they're still not quite there. Their hormones aren't there.
You know what else happens when people cut out meat? Is they replace it with vegetables.
They do.
How often does someone say, I need to get healthier, I'm going to cut out meat and replace it with chips?
Right.
They don't do that for the most part. They say, well, I'm not going to eat meat anymore, so I should probably get some vegetables, right? I'm going to start replacing that with whatever else there is. It's It's going to be broccoli. It's going to be cauliflower
Exactly.
and squash. And those vegetables are super good for you. So yes, of course you experience a bump.
Exactly.
Especially in the short term.
Totally.
But like Jeannick said, you hit a plateau at some point and you can't progress anymore. And you don't understand why.
Right.
It's usually that.
And a small thing that you could incorporate again is like the desiccated organ complex. Just start with that and see how it does. And then maybe reincorporate some bone broth.
Yeah.
Or some ghee or whatever. Just small things like that. And again, you guys heal your gut, because if you were sick, it's probably because your gut was torn to shreds by your standard American diet. If you were sick, it means your digestion wasn't working efficiently because it's been abused for so many years.
Yeah,
so heal your gut. Otherwise, because you aren't what you eat, you are what you absorb. And if your gut is not healed, you're not absorbing, you're not healing and repairing. You're going to continue to age at an accelerated rate.
Yeah. How many people have we worked with that they've been eating this stellar diet for years and they're emaciated and they feel terrible.
Yep.
And they have chronic diarrhea. They absorb nothing. And so you have to fix the gut. You have to do it.
And for most people that we work with, we put them on a few digestive enzymes, fix their hydrochloric acid, and they're like, oh my gosh, my digestion is 75% better. Like within weeks. It's amazing.
Right.
Some cases obviously are a little bit more complex, but for the majority of people, it's just fixing and fine-tuning some digestive distress and helping your body absorb things better. And then things work so beautifully.
And then the hard part is just being patient, because it takes time. We're not using medication. We're not shortcutting the process at the expense of side effects.
We're using the laws of nature.
We are. And nature will not be rushed. Nature will do things in her own time.
Exactly.
And that, again, this is what works for us. This is what we have seen work over and over again.
Exactly.
We're not proclaiming it as the one true way, gospel truth that you have no choice but to follow or be in terrible health for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
But if you don't know where to go, if you have no idea what you should be doing, this is what we've seen work over and over and over again.
Right.
So it's a good bet. It's a good starting point.
I want to give you guys an example there's a book I'm reading called The Mind-Gut Connection, or
I think that's right.
And he talks about, it's an incredible book. And he talks a lot about how the gut biome in your stomach was designed to help eke out every little inch of calorie for you to survive on back in the day when, food was sparse. And that's how I kind of view protein. When you are sparse for nutrition and you're not healing, animal protein ekes out that extra little oomph for you to help you heal a little bit faster, a little bit quicker, absorb better, versus going to synthetic vitamins, which you might not be able to metabolize because your GI tract is so torn up. And so I just thought the comparison of your microbiome, helping to create an extra 100 calories a day that potentially kept you alive a few thousand years ago, and then animal protein to today, eking out that extra bit of B vitamin to help heal your gut, or that extra bit of vitamin D from cod liver oil to help your immune system function and regulate properly. It's when you are ill, every little bit counts. And so that's why we don't put everyone on a vegan diet, because I didn't talk about this earlier, but look up the DIAS score, you guys. It's DIAAS, and it actually compares the absorbability of animal protein or animal sources of protein to plant-based proteins. And you'll see that actually animal sources of protein are more highly digestible and absorbable to plant-based proteins. Again, if your digestion sucks, that score is it's that much more important.
Right.
That you are absorbing a more absorbable protein.
Yeah. And this isn't really about the protein, but the B12 that you mentioned a minute ago. I've done a lot of blood chem analyses in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And one thing that I see over and over and over again, especially in people that have been sick for a long time, is B12 deficiency.
Yeah.
Here's the thing though. You can test your serum B12 levels and it'll show that you're fine, even though your tissue B12 levels, the access your body has to B12 is really low.
Yeah.
And there are other signs that will point towards B12 deficiency. I actually won't go into them because they're super nerdy, but the fact is that I see usually like 4 or 5 of these indicators. Anyone who's done one with me will be able to verify that. Yeah. He talks about B12 a lot. You cannot get it from any source other than animal products. There was one, I don't remember if it was a documentary or if it was an article claiming that there was a group of vegetarians, vegans, I think, that were B12 sufficient without any kind of supplementation.
Yeah.
They went back later to check and found out these people were fertilizing their crops with their own poop.
Oh, and so they were getting it from their poop, from the bacteria.
Because so B12 comes from bacteria.
Yeah.
And when you supplement with it, it's coming from bacteria, right? But that bacteria, it does all of its work in your gut.
Yeah.
And so then, you get your food down in your gut, the bacteria create all this B12. Some of it absorbs, some of it exits with your poop.
Right.
And then if you are
fertilizing your crops,
they're
really high in bees.
I don't necessarily recommend doing that, but yeah, it actually was helping these people to get their B vitamins. So
interesting.
If you want to be vegan, then fertilize your crops with their own poop.
Don't do that.
That's the takeaway for the day.
Super snarky. But that goes back to the argument. Well, if cows are getting enough B vitamins from their grass, then so can we. No, it's actually the bacteria in their guts.
Yeah,
their bacteria is creating that B vitamin, and a healthy cow has healthy bacteria.
And by the way,
it's making tons of B vitamins.
The bacteria are making the proteins too.
Yes,
this is something I never knew about cows and protein that blew my mind. Was what they're doing is they're eating all this plant protein and it's going into like their 7 stomachs. How many stomachs?
4.
Is it 4? There's a lot of stomachs. Yeah. I stopped counting it too, but it basically, it becomes bacteria food and it sits in there, it ruminates, right? And the bacteria eat it up and then they actually are the cow food. Yeah. The cows live off of the bacteria. They're digesting the bacteria.
That's so cool.
It is. It's so cool. And then when we eat the cows and the other animals, we benefit from that by getting the protein without having to eat pounds upon pounds of plant protein, plant product, and then letting our own guts turn it into protein, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we have this middleman and it's not an unnecessary middleman. It is a very, very necessary middleman. I think it's the USDA recommendations for protein intake are, 0.8 grams per kilogram of weight. Yeah. But what they're finding when they actually dig in on the research again, when they really look closely, they find it's more like you need a full gram of protein per kilogram of body weight.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of protein. Yeah. Yeah. And that's really hard to do. Yeah. And have bioavailability, what Jeannick was talking about with that DS score. And be able to meet all of your body's needs. Right. And if our body isn't having enough protein, if it's not getting enough access to that, it's going to struggle in all the ways.
Yep, exactly. And you know what's interesting is every time I do my hair analyses, I see 2 main groups of people that are struggling with protein synthesis. And the first is obviously vegans. Like proteins always show up, always, every single time. I've only had 1 case where it didn't. I
did 4 of these analyses the year that I was vegan, and every single one of them.
Every single one. Yeah. And also people who are aging. So if you are late 30s, 40s, 50s, like the older.
Am I aging?
I guess so.
I'm late 30s and I'm like.
Well, I don't want to be like rude and be like, it's only people in their 50s.
No, but the older you get.
The older people that I do their hair analyses, protein synthesis always shows up.
Why do you think that is?
Because they're aging and so their healing is slower. Their body's ability to absorb is slower too. I mean, as we age, even our gastric juices are less and less and less.
See, that would be one of my first guesses is that our stomachs stop producing enough hydrochloric
they
acid.
get tired.
Everything
And we're
is
stressed. And we're super stressed.
The accumulated stress of life and then just the natural process of aging. So we're not breaking down proteins very well, which means we're not able to utilize them, right?
Exactly. And another body of people are athletes. They always show up with protein synthesis, even though they're like, I'm eating tons of protein shakes. I'm like, that's a problem.
Yeah. So why? What's the deal with protein
shakes?
powder versus like protein from an animal?
Well, you want me to talk about it, or do you want to talk about it?
I mean, either one of us can. So here's my issue with protein powders. It's that they are basically a processed food.
Extremely processed.
We just spent 10 minutes earlier in this episode railing against processed foods in the form of these trans fats and all of that stuff. But it happens on the protein side of things too.
Yeah.
So theoretically,
powder,
these protein powders, whey protein is one of the most bioavailable sources of protein out there.
I have an issue. Okay, so we're going to talk about whey protein in a separate episode, a dairy episode.
Okay, all right.
But keep going. We'll briefly brush up on it.
But in my opinion, which I'll be honest, I don't have the strongest research backing in this claim. It's more of my personal hunch. I don't think that protein powder is doing us nearly as much good as real animal protein.
It's totally not.
By the time it's gone through that full process and the multiple steps of the process, you should look up how they make this protein powder. It's disgusting.
It's insane.
It's
highly processed.
It doesn't resemble the original thing whatsoever.
Right.
So as far as I can tell, we are mutating and deforming these proteins into a shape that is not anything close to where it started.
No.
And that's important because the shape of proteins is what makes them function.
Exactly. Well, it goes even earlier in the process because the majority, I would say probably 99.9% of whey proteins are obviously from conventional milk, even if it's organic. So
it's been
organic milk has been pasteurized.
Right.
Natural whey, you guys, if you just leave raw milk to sit on a counter, it will ferment and then the whey will actually naturally separate itself from the raw milk. Now, conventional milk, if you just let it ferment, you are not getting any separation of whey from the milk. Like the proteins are not separating.
Is that from the pasteurization or the homogenization?
It's probably from both.
They always do both, right?
It's heated. So any kind of conventional milk, if it is not raw, you will not get that separation. So what do? They use I think it's a chemical to pull out the whey from that milk protein or solid or something like that. And so it's already been damaged in the beginning. That's why it's not separating. And now we are extracting artificially this already damaged protein and hydrating it and calling it a whey protein and saying that it's healthy for us. No, you guys, whey protein is this yellow kind of it's this yellow substance.
It doesn't taste like chocolate.
No, it tastes a little bit like watery sour cream. And I know, right? Yum. And so if you want real whey, buy raw milk and just let it ferment and you will see that separation. And then you can take that whey and throw it in your smoothies. Yeah, and there's your whey protein.
And that, by the way, is going to be super good for you.
Super healthy.
As long as you can handle the dairy.
For your microbiome. Right. Like, oh my gosh, the bacteria in that is unbelievable. And this is what they did hundreds of years ago.
The other issue with protein powders that I think is really important to point out is...
Plant-based or whey?
I mean, all protein powders, but it gets even worse when you move to the plant-based side of things.
Yeah.
That's contamination.
How so? Oh, like heavy metal contamination.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's worse than we realize. The
Clean Label Project took tons and tons of these different protein powders and tested them for contamination in the form of heavy metals. And it was almost ubiquitous. The whey proteins, I think, were actually the best.
They were actually better than the organic and inorganic.
Yeah,
they were.
Organic was worse than inorganic protein powder when it came to.
And I can't figure out why. But what we know is what they're doing is they're taking massive crops of plant-based protein, plants,
right?
and like massive. And then we are extracting the protein from that. And again, it's an unnatural process, right? This wasn't something our bodies were really designed to do or to ingest.
Yeah.
And so what Tristan and I try to preach is always move away from the synthetic, artificial, processed, man-made foods.
Yeah,
yes, it's from a plant, but it's man-made.
Yes.
You know,
Eat real food. That's really what it comes down to. Eat real food, and slow food is always better.
Right. Yeah.
It's just not common that you find a very convenient food that is also very good for you.
Right. So that takes us to collagen powders. How do we feel about that? You guys, we're kind of on the fence with it because I've been saying for months, I'm going to actually get a bunch of collagen powders and get them third-party tested for heavy metals. I don't think anyone has done that yet.
Not that we've come across.
If someone has, please send them our way. But the thing about collagen protein powders is it's less processed than the plant-based and the whey.
Right.
And so that's what we recommend to people when they want a protein sourced whatever.
And collagen has all kinds of purported benefits for hair, skin, nails, gut, brain.
Yes.
Right? Did I nail it all?
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
Yep. And so if you want, and again, our opinion might change in a few months. The more knowledge we get, the more we will share. But at this point in time, if you need a protein powder, collagen, to our best knowledge, is the least processed and the least contaminated that we know of.
So remember, it's always a good, better, best thing, right? We're not going to say that there's one true way and everything else is terrible, but there is good, better, best.
Yes.
Best in this situation would be like meat on the bone, where you have that naturally occurring collagen right there.
Or homemade bone broth.
Bone broth. Fantastic. Yep. All of that.
Or you're eating, 3 ounces of liver a week.
Yes.
And if you're not doing that, then you're taking it in a pill form.
Right.
Yeah,
like we love the Paleo Valley Oregon complex because it has liver, kidney, heart. It's gently freeze dried and encapsulated.
Yeah.
No weird fillers in there.
Right.
It's grass-fed beef, by the way. So this is like high quality stuff. We love it. And it's a lot easier, to be honest, than trying to trick our kids into eating liver.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, heart and kidney. Like, where do you even start with that?
I know, right?
That's hard. We're not there yet. We're working on it. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to cover one last thing.
Go.
Which is the argument that meat or animal products are acidifying and therefore bad for us. This was a big argument I heard all the time in my vegan days, which is that plants are alkaline, animal products are acid, therefore you need to stay away from them because our systems are too acidic. There's not much to it, guys. There's not. You can go and look at people who have been doing this carnivore diet for a long time. Some of them do blood testing. They don't have inflammation up the wazoo. They don't, because they're eating really good sources of the meat, right? The other thing, their pH, which is measured by adding up all of your electrolytes, and the ones that are on the positive side, the ones that are on the negative side, they have to balance each other out. It doesn't cause acidity there. It doesn't put you in a negative, so to speak. What does though? You're breathing. All right. If you've done a blood chem analysis with me, you've heard me do this spiel, but I always, especially in women, I see low carbon dioxide levels. And that is a breathing issue, not a meat issue.
Right.
So if your system is too acidic, start breathing more. That's a total side note here.
Yeah.
But I wanted to address that concern. Your stomach is like the most acidic place in your body.
Yeah.
And all the food goes there first. It gets turned into this chyme, which is like a nutrient sludge.
Yeah.
And then it's absorbed into the rest of your body. That's it. There's no acid being sent everywhere else. There's uric acid, which in some people causes gout, which is very painful in your joints.
But sugar causes that.
But fructose specifically, right?
Yeah.
Fructose, having too much fructose is more likely to cause your gout, in my opinion. Once again, I haven't actually looked that one up.
Which, the fructose?
The fructose.
No,
yeah.
it's a direct correlation.
Is it more likely than
it's
too much protein?
Than more protein. I haven't actually compared those two.
So
but you eat fructose. A byproduct is a formaldehyde and uric acid.
Right.
Those are direct byproducts of fructose.
So the aldehyde itself is problematic for your liver. The uric acid is causes kidney stones
and
right?
gout.
It's a problem and gout. So having a ton of fructose in your diet, which by the way, high fructose corn syrup, standard American diet.
Yes.
Right. And then adding to that high amounts of protein. Yeah. You're probably going to have a problem.
Right.
You're going to have a problem.
Totally.
So anyway, that's enough on that. Way off. We need to end this. What else? Is there anything that we haven't covered yet?
No, I think that really, again, you guys, we don't want to villainize proteins. We just want to kind of give you the whole scoop on everything. Again, if you're eating healthy based proteins, please get your veggies in. Please. I did a post on my Instagram on, how many servings of vegetables should people be eating a day? You guys, we should all be eating at least 8 servings of vegetables. If you're on an extremely aggressive healing kick, you want more than that. Now, again, if you have digestive distress, that's going to be harder for you. That's why we need to address the digestion
you
first.
can get too much fiber. It's true.
Or you don't have the gut biome to handle it, or you're not producing enough hydrochloric acid or digestive enzymes. And so it's creating more inflammation than it's actually healing. Again, everyone's case is so unique. And so this is why I wanted to do this episode, because people, they don't know what to believe anymore. Before we wrap up, someone asked me on Instagram if liver is the organ that cleanses you, and pulls out toxins, then isn't it toxic and isn't it dangerous?
Well, no, I think what they specifically said isn't that where your body stores toxins?
Toxins, right.
No, as it turns out.
So you guys, the liver produces substrates, and it produces chemicals to take those toxins and deliver them into your poop. So what actually stores toxins? It's your poop. And so,
or your urine in a lot of cases,
yes.
and your fat cells.
And so, if your liver is holding onto toxins, it is a very diseased liver. You're probably dying.
Yes.
And so, does that mean that we need to overburden the liver? Absolutely not.
No,
we need to be very mindful of the chemicals that we put in and on our bodies, and the chemicals that we inhale.
And support your digestion.
Yes.
One really good way to mess up your liver is to get messed up digestion.
Well, and eat foods that are very supportive towards the liver. There's lots of foods that help clean the liver, help clean out the toxins. They provide a vesicle to pull toxins out, and that's a lot of times that's fiber, right? The fiber from foods acts as the broom. And so the quicker you can get that poop out of you, the healthier you are. If you're constipated, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, you're marinating in your own poop. You're marinating in your own toxins. So make sure you're pooping at least once, if not twice a day. That's a really good way to help support your liver. Not drinking alcohol is another way to support your liver. There's so many things. So it's not the liver that's the problem. The liver is one of the most incredible organs, but it's not a trash can. Right. Basically, it creates the plastic lining for the trash can so that you can, once it's filled up, you dump it outside.
Right. So that being said, don't run out and buy liver from factory farmed cows and start eating that, because there is a decent chance that there is a bunch of toxicity in that liver. Go get the grass-fed liver.
Yep.
Pay extra for it. It's worthwhile.
There's a reason why they give those cows antibiotics.
Yeah.
It's because those cows are extremely sick.
Or they could become extremely sick without the antibiotics, but then you have antibiotic issues with your liver. So don't do it. Don't do it.
So the sourcing does matter. And so that's the thing with the liver, you guys. It's a very controversial topic. As people are too scared to try liver. And I think that's it. Now, one last thing. If you are pregnant, you need to be mindful of how much vitamin A you're getting. And liver is extremely high in vitamin A. You want to make sure you don't exceed that, because too much vitamin A can cause birth defects.
Yeah.
So
but don't get too low in vitamin A either, because that's also problematic.
Because that will also cause birth defects as well. So, so again, yeah, just be mindful, do your research, just take what we say and then, apply what seems necessary in your life.
Yeah.
Again, we use this platform to just help you become your own health expert.
We want you to find the system that works for you.
Exactly.
And if that's not our system, that's great. We don't care. We know lots of people who don't follow the same health philosophy we do, and they're fantastic people.
They do great.
We don't try to kill each other when we come across each other. So, and we're not going to try to tell you that we are the only source of trustworthy information out there. That's ridiculous and kind of cultish, to be honest.
And we don't have any stock in any animal companies.
Not yet.
So I don't think we ever would. That's just too much work. But yeah, take it or leave it. Hopefully you have learned something today that has been empowering. It's giving you some food for thought as far as how do you go about healing your body. And that's it from us.
Thank you, everybody. We will talk to you next time.
There you go.
Bye.
Bye.